YouTube can spend money.
I use this app under protest as it is. Hello, Running Deck.
Oh, I haven't put Discord on this. Oh well, never mind.
Yeah, a couple. Was it last week or the week before? I think it was last week. Tim said, "Oh, I'm using a laptop, so I can't possibly run Discord. So you guys will just have to keep an eye on it for me." It was very convenient.
Are we all well anyway, gentlemen?
Vibrant.
Fragrant.
Vibrant, not fragrant. I mean, I have been described as fragrant in the past. But...
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's been one of those weird mornings. We took Scarlett to her grade 1 piano exam this morning, and it was scheduled mid-morning, so it's one of those things where it just completely messes up like the first 6 hours of the day, having to deal with the preparation and the aftermath and the getting her back to school afterwards and all of that. Somehow a 5-minute exam becomes...
something for them to look at. There we go.
Can you stop flapping your breasts into the camera, please, Mr.
Running
Honeywell?
Deck, well, Mr. Running Deck saying I hadn't said anything, so I thought I'll give you a little.
Well, that doesn't address the issue at all.
Well, it gives them something.
You're
to talk
doing the
about.
precise opposite.
Well, good luck to
So how was
your daughter.
how was the grade 1 piano exam?
Well, I don't know. I swear I remember when I used to do grade exams, they'd tell you at the end how you did.
Yeah.
But no, they don't now.
No. My eldest sister is a senior examiner for the Royal Academy, and it's all goes off and gets marked and processed through the system and all this stuff.
Yes, but I'm sure that's changed.
Yeah, it definitely did when I was at school. You got it straight away.
Yeah.
I remember, long time ago.
Well, I did mine only 10 years ago, and I'm sure it was... Anyway, the short answer is yes, as you
10
say.
seconds.
Oh, you're quite right. We don't know, but she said she felt confident, so fingers crossed. I'm certain she's passed. Whether she got distinction, we shall have to wait and see.
So
and it's 1
we're all
o'clock.
going to pile in on topic number 1, because I think there's a lot of piling in to be done.
Okay.
The lawyer's on standby.
Good afternoon and welcome to the PC Pro podcast. It is Thursday the 27th of March 2025 and I'm Barry Collins, features editor of that fine magazine thing we knock out every once in a while. With me today I have John Honeyball.
Afternoon.
I've got Lee Grant.
Good afternoon.
And I've got Dan Graham-Smith.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And we have got a lot to talk about this week. Let's start, John, with some... Well, let's say some indiscretions from the US government.
Well, I've got to be careful what I say since I'm flying into America next week, and I don't want to get turned back at the border. So this has turned out to be quite a story, as I'm sure everybody has been keeping tabs on. And it's not only just the size and shape of the story, it's the rate at which it's changing and changing shape over the last 24, 48 hours. Basically speaking, in one of those truly delicious gaffes that only IT can manage, a reporter from the editor of the Atlantic magazine website found himself in a joint chat room on Signal, the chat service, the encrypted chat service, with a whole bunch of very, very senior American politicians and so forth. And it was then discussed about forthcoming attacks on in the Yemen, I think it was, and this was included what was going to happen at times in the future. It wasn't discussing things that had happened. And he sort of, it would appear from reading what he has written, he sort of silently sat there, I think, watching this unfold in front of him, slightly slack-jawed, that he had been joined into this clearly private group. And he decided that, not surprisingly, there was a story in this. He left the group having taken full transcript of it, and then published a whole bunch of information about it, but very carefully redacted anything about ongoing missions and military people involved, concentrating on the politicians, of course. And trying very hard, he claimed, to not compromise anybody who may be out there on active service. The reaction of the White House has been shall we say, disappointing but utterly predictable, which is it started off as no, it didn't, then turned into, well, it did, but it wasn't important, and then it turned into it did, but it wasn't important, and nothing secret was talked about. Then it turned into he's just a terrible reporter, and it's evil journalism, and so forth. And then, of course, the opposition in Washington and the opposition facing press piled in and has started asking questions like, what actually happened? Did they actually discuss these? And they were getting some very evasive answers. So Jeffrey Goldberg decided to, shall we say, open the kimono a little bit further, including copy and pasted transcripts of things that were actually quoted as being said by the various very senior politicians involved. And at this point, the whole thing just seems to have gone off into orbit. Trump is trying to distance himself slightly by saying, as you'd entirely expect, he wasn't there, he wasn't party to this, he knew nothing about it, la la la. It's turning into a complete mess. I've been talking to a number of friends who are involved in similar levels of secret level information in other countries, that kind of level of security clearance. And the reaction of one was you would have been picked up and walked to the nearest prison cell faster than you could say banana for any of this stuff. But there's a serious question mark as to whether anybody is actually going to get thrown into jail, forced to resign over this. It is a huge mistake. And before I let Barry jump in, because I can see him champing at the bit here, I have to say it's very easy to say, well, those awfully nasty Americans doing this terrible, terrible thing. But I must point out, it's been known for quite a while that the British government, of whichever political flavour we're talking about, seems to inhabit WhatsApp groups, and many of those have been caught with their proverbial trousers down by their ankles. And I have to say to myself, why on earth isn't communicating anything of governmental business, whether it is level secret or not, on a public, effectively a public service like Snapchat, these third-party platforms? Why isn't this an immediate criminal offence? Because it damn well should be. And if I had my time with a baseball bat in the cabinet office, it would be a criminal offence to use anything other than a properly documenting, properly encrypted platform. I hand it over to everybody to vent their wrath.
Well, I was going to say this. I mean, this isn't a politics podcast, but the technology aspect of this is that, as you're saying, they are using publicly available services, encrypted services in the case of Signal, but nevertheless, they don't have the same level of access controls or oversight that approved channels do. I mean, John, maybe you can run through what the difference is between the access controls that you might have on, say, Microsoft Teams, which is what I believe the official government app is in the US, and something like Signal. What's the difference there?
Well, the difference here immediately is if you are a governmental customer of someone like Microsoft Teams, you can make sure that all of your traffic is going into certain servers that are kept well away from other servers. There's facilities that are not really talked about that are available at that kind of government level from the very big companies. Secondly, the only thing you need to be joined into a Signal group is a phone number, and that's it. And there's no verification, there's no 2FA, there's no requirement to do anything. So whether or not this person, this Jeffrey Goldberg, was added deliberately or by mistake, or they thought it wasn't Jeffrey Goldberg, it was Jeffrey Goldblum from the actor, who would have some insight as to what Hollywood's take would be on this. I don't know. The point is, it is a massively insecure platform, simply because if you get your device owned by a hacker, they they have got access into this. There's absolutely no way that this should have been possible, and it certainly should not be possible on devices owned by the people themselves. These should be issued devices under full management control by the FBI, CIA, military, etc. But please correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't one of the first things that Mr. Trump did when he came into office this time was start handing out security classifications to anybody willy-nilly that he deemed to be a good chap. The whole thing is really quite terrifying, and I would love to think nothing like this could happen in the UK. But my worries over UK governmental use a reliance on WhatsApp makes my toes curl.
What's your thoughts on this, Darren?
Yeah, I mean, for me, what was most concerning about this whole thing was, I mean, obviously the content of the messages was hot stuff, but right at the very start of it, it also says vanishing messages are set to 1 week. They were using that feature.
And isn't that not illegal? Sorry to interrupt. I understand that under the legal requirements for handling secure data, that kind of data, there has to be a proper rolling data
audit trail. Yes. Well, I'm not aware of the ins and outs of the specific regulations that apply to the highfalutin US administration members, but yeah, it's really dodgy, isn't it? I mean, even if it's not a legal requirement, the fact that they're going so far outside of established processes which are supposed to be supposed to provide some sort of transparency and accountability. In this instance, I don't think anyone's suggesting that. I mean, obviously, what was it, airstrikes on a third party country, on a different country, that's a pretty big undertaking.
Which I must point out had not happened at that moment in time.
Yes, but the fact that they were doing it, I mean, the fact of the act alone is itself of questionable legality, and maybe I'm even putting it generously there. The fact that they're trying to do it in the most cloak and dagger, unaccountable way possible is very concerning. But of course, I mean, these are, as far as I can make out based on my own personal observation, these are very sloppy, overconfident people who don't have any sense of responsibility or consequences. So of course they're going to just go, well, this has the benefit that we don't have to explain ourselves. We don't have to.
Yay,
Well, exactly, yeah. And so it all follows from that. And of course, they'd use their personal devices because they think they're invincible and they think they're special. The thing which is, I mean, so to say, the thing which alarmed me most of all when I first saw this was the fact that not only were they using an, I expect, unapproved, certainly legally questionable messaging system in a legally questionable way, but I got so caught up in that, I forgot what the end of that sentence was. But it wasn't good, I can assure you.
I'll message Lee and see if he's got any idea what you were going to say. But just to follow on that point, though, Lee, that John was saying, this isn't unique to the US. We had the whole COVID debates discussed on WhatsApp that's going through the inquiry at the moment. Why is it that aside from the, maybe trying to hide accountability, do you think there's other reasons why politicians resort to these personal apps rather than approved means?
You can only really say go with what Darian says. There's a certain bromance going on in the White House at the moment, and clearly these people think they're above the regulation.
So I just remembered I was going to say, it's the consequence. Now it's all out in the open. Still, none of them is even considering or questioning as a matter of, how can we improve our processes for next time? It's all deflect, attack. And so there's no, I mean, obviously on some level, these people do have, they do have a couple of brain cells to rub together. So hopefully they'll be a little bit more careful about their messaging in future, although perhaps it would be better for the rest of us if they weren't. But there's no. We don't have any confidence that things are going to get better.
But I also, I guess the point I was trying to hint at with you, Leo, come back to you, is that the convenience, I suspect, is the number one reason why they go for these things, not necessarily to hide communication trails, and the fact that it's just so easy to set up those communication channels and quickly set up groups of people is why the politicians try and avoid the official routes a lot of time, because it's just accessible in the same way that maybe a chat in a corridor would have been 10 years ago, these things are now done unofficially. And it's, to be fair, it's not just politicians. I've seen this kind of stuff happen in big companies, in we've seen it many times in regulated companies where they're only meant to use official channels and then end up using unofficial communication channels. Lee, sorry, I did cut you short.
No. All I was going to say is one thing about the Signal app. I use Signal myself, and something that really hasn't been touched on too much in the reports is, Signal allows linked devices. All right, it is fully encrypted, but it means basically, if you don't want linked devices, if you never use this platform, you have Signal, for example, on your mobile. You can also have it on your desktop, and you will see one on the other. It's a convenient thing. So my question would be, given the levels of competency being demonstrated in the White House, would you be convinced that everything was watertight? Who else is reading this? Do you remember Trump's Twitter feed was attacked in 2020? Do you recall how they did it?
Oh, did they guess his passwords?
His password was MAGA 2020.
Yeah.
Correct. And as Darian said, they're coming out of here absolutely sort of fighting rather than trying to sort of defend themselves. And Michael Waltz, the guy that has been fingered for putting this group together, he's the National Security Advisor. Now, he said on Fox News, and this is wonderful, have you ever had somebody's contact that shows their name and then you have somebody else's number? So of course I didn't see this loser in the group. I'm sure everyone out there has a contact where it said one person and then a different phone number. There's a lot. I guess we can sort of keep going through this, but the American chat show host Stephen Colbert said night before, he said, over the last 2 months, all the worrywarts out there have been going around saying the Trump administration is evil. He says, I don't think that's fair. They're also dumb. And, I think that's a fair summation.
It's kind of annoying because, although there is no logical reason why it should be the case, Elon Musk has been very closely involved in all sorts of Trump goings on. And although I believe that his status as tech genius is massively overstated, he ought to know some of this stuff. And if they're going to have him in cabinet meetings advising on all sorts of things which he's not qualified to talk about, this area where he does have some knowledge, you would hope, it's insane to me that he hasn't managed to get his finger into that particular pie.
And also, let's not forget that the whole multiple layers of secrecy and vetting only works because people are prepared to go along with it and stand by it. Yeah. So I've friends who have got very high levels of security clearance, and you wouldn't even dream of asking them to talk about what they do at their work, even down the pub kind of thing, because they can't and they won't, and it would be just considered deeply bad manners to inquire. The problem is that there's an awful lot of people out there who have got extremely high security clearances by comparison to the proverbial person on the Clapham omnibus, and it only works if they see that the often significant personal restrictions that are put on them to have that level of clearance actually is worthwhile in the big picture. You take on the responsibility with the job, you take on that information, and you have to stand by the security requirements involved. If they are seeing, and I have seen this in various chat places, if the middle and upper level of people with those sorts of clearances are now seeing politicians basically willy-nilly, in their eyes, potentially abusing the security clearance and this whole security methodology, that is actually really bad news in the long term.
Well, it's a different scenario because it was deliberate leaks, but this is effectively what Edward Snowden was doing in terms of using unofficial hardware to leak or unofficial means of transmission to leak what he did, and now they're doing it seemingly with impunity. But maybe we shouldn't raise too many eyebrows at that. It's not terribly surprising. Anything more to say on this before we move on?
Well, we could go all week, but
yeah.
Let's not.
Okay, all right, let's shuffle along, and next one's with me, and this is a quite significant upgrade to OpenAI's image generation model. So until now, OpenAI and ChatGPT has relied on what's called the DALL-E model for image generation, and frankly, it wasn't that good. It was certainly behind the level of sophistication on offer from services such as Midjourney. But yesterday they unveiled that they'd implemented a completely new model into ChatGPT's image generation that is based actually on the language model itself. So ChatGPT 4.0, or the language model 4.0, sorry, rather than a separate image generation model in its own right. And the results are pretty startling. In terms of the sophistication of the types of images that it can generate, it is probably the biggest single step change I've seen in the 4 or 5 years we've had of these things being in existence. The most significant change is the way it handles text. The new model is much more sophisticated at generating text in images. So previously, if you try to generate anything more than a couple of words, and even that would be a stretch sometimes, you would frequently get typos, you would get blurred text, it would just become a mishmash. What they're now offering, I'm going to put up some examples for our friends who are joining us live on Discord into the chat hopefully, is you can fill entire screens with text that you've requested, and it produces them very legibly. So what I'm putting up on screen now, for example, I asked it to generate an image of a teacher writing the first couple of lines from Macbeth on a whiteboard, and it does it perfectly. I mean, the text is perfectly legible. You can tell it's computer generated, but only just. It looks perfectly readable, and actually as well, the model of the human involved has become much more realistic than anything I've seen in the past from DALL-E. I asked it to create a front cover of PC Pro magazine, and I only gave it the main headline. I said, generate a PC Pro magazine with Windows 12, everything you need to know on the cover. And it not only did that, it stole the logo of the magazine, it put a Microsoft logo on the front, and it generated 6 other cover lines to go on the cover as well. All
they
of
weren't
which,
bad either.
No, they weren't. I mean, we've put worse on the cover.
Yeah, coming later this year.
So it was pretty impressive. And when you ask what's the practical use of this, well, from a business sense, if you're producing collateral to go onto social media, for example, so I'm just putting up an example I did yesterday where you asked it for example, an image of fruit juices and say all juices 20% off today, and it generated that within a few seconds. Again, looks perfectly nice. It's the kind of thing you could well imagine a cafe or a juice bar was going to run on their Instagram account or whatever, and that's done in seconds. You're not worrying about having to refuzz text or everything. It's all just done for you, and looks pretty attractive. And the other good thing about now, previously with DALL-E, you could generate one image, but it was pretty much generated in isolation. You couldn't say to it, just change something on that image, because it would basically start again with a whole new image that looks something like it. And where that really let you down is if you're generating something like characters. So if you want to create, let's say a character for your business who becomes the sort of icon, a bit like the Michelin Man or something like that, a sort of
Mascot.
a mascot. Thank you very much, Darren, for filling in that. I need ChatGPT to finish my sentences. Then previously, again, you could generate a character fine, but you couldn't continue using them. So if you asked it to use the same character in another image, it would create a variation of that character, but it wasn't the same. Now you can do that. So here's just a little puppy thing I created yesterday on ChatGPT. It's wonderful, isn't it, John? I'm impressed myself with the sheer quality of the prompt.
It's very you.
It is me. It's exactly me, in fact. But here's how you can then use that same character. So then I asked it to use that character, pretending it was a sofa store where you're doing a sofa clearance. Asked it to put it on the sofa with wearing a pair of fluffy slippers and add sofa clearance now on in text. Now, the results look pretty rudimentary. This is just the first stab at it. But you can see that the character I generated first is now identifiable as the character in the second. It's the same thing. So you can keep reusing that prompt or keep reusing that character within all of your promotional material. And this not only works for cartoon generated animated characters type things, you could create a human-like character, a photorealistic character, and have that applied. So if you wanted, Howard from the Halifax ads, for example, you could potentially create that in AI and use that same character throughout all of your marketing materials. So this is a huge step forward in terms of AI image service. I think it's now possibly the more advanced, the most advanced image generation service out there. I think it's overtaken Midjourney practically overnight. Gentlemen, any thoughts?
Is this a free add-on, Barry, or is this part of? Is it for those of us that don't subscribe? Do we get access to it at some point, or is it going to cost us?
No, it's available on every tier of ChatGPT currently. There are limits on the free version of how many images you can generate within a certain time frame. They don't ever specify those, but I think once you get past like 5 or 6 an hour, it starts to rate limit you. But no, it's available on every tier of account. It will be available to developers through the API at some point in the coming weeks as well. It's only available via ChatGPT at the moment, but it is very impressive. John, so were you going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly very impressive. The way, the speed at which these tools are moving forward is incredibly impressive. My only underlying concern as the sort of nominated old grumpy person is how, if you take an image generated by a service like this, not just this one but another one, how sure can you be, if you're going to use it in a business environment, that it is unique, it is yours, it's not derivative of something else, and that you're not actually landing yourself in some potential trademark copyright type nightmare 2 years down the line when somebody else spots that they got also a very similar logo. I don't know. I'm certainly not an expert in trademarks. I know we've done some for our food company, and it is an absolute minefield, and the legal advice is very expensive. And my concern here is that if it's that easy to generate things, then people in the proverbial back bedroom of their house will put together what looks like an incredibly good marketing campaign, and unfortunately get taken down the river down in the future, and who is liable?
Yeah, that's a fair point. And then Adobe, for example, insists that all of their AI is trained on approved sources. So it only trains on its own image libraries and images where it has permission. That doesn't necessarily prevent what you're suggesting, John, where you've effectively copied someone else. And I think that's definitely a risk. I think you'd have to be careful in terms of what you're using it in terms of branding. But I think for creating social media images, for example, as I said before, that example with the juice thing, I can easily see it being used easily by stores or whatever.
Absolutely.
And there's no real threat there.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of day-to-day disposable stuff, it's super fast and it's clearly very good. I mean, I was actually much more impressed by the juice one than by the little puppy dog, if only because if you actually compared the puppy dog, their foreheads were quite different. And I don't know how, if you could in the program make it use exactly the same facial features, because otherwise you're going to get elements of variance here that means it's not as useful as it otherwise would be. So I don't know. I'm still very open-minded about these things, because they are moving forward at a phenomenal rate of producing some quite astonishing output. But I'm also just cautious, have this sort of cautious nature behind it as well.
Darren?
Sorry, my apologies.
Yeah, well, I'm getting flashbacks, not necessarily in an entirely good way, to the mid '90s, late '90s, where we had the web search engine wars, because there were lots of contenders at the time offering quite genuinely useful, powerful services, but you had to sort of stay on top of who was up and who was down and what new features were arriving, on a monthly basis. And that's the sort of situation I find myself in now with all these different AI services, where there's a constant race in all sorts of of different directions and different capabilities, and it's just exhausting to keep up. And even if you decide for yourself, I'm going to use only Gemini just to keep my life manageable, you could get blindsided by something else that comes out of Copilot or comes out of OpenAI or comes out of Sora. Does that, there's just there's too many of them to keep track of. And I think that's obviously it's an exciting but also challenging situation to be in every time. Like, for example, you were saying about the cartoon dog and how you could reuse it. I've been playing with Gemini, and I freely admit it's just because I've taken the path of least resistance. It's appeared on my phone, so that's the one I'm using, and it's done a really, really good job of generating a dog from thin air. Then I said do a cartoon version, now do a sofa advert with that same dog, now show me that same dog skydiving, and it all looks perfectly good to me. I don't know whether I ever need to use it, but I don't know. I guess my answer is I wasn't even aware that Gemini could do these things until you brought to my attention that OpenAI can. So it's the other way in which it's like the 90s. Is the technology, and I've said this before about AI, is racing ahead of my ability to actually keep track of what my options are, what I can use it for.
Sorry, go on, Lee.
You mentioned and you've shown. My apologies, I haven't got Discord today, but I've seen the PC Pro mock-up cover that you've done, and you mentioned that Adobe has sort of appeased itself by saying that we only train on sort of authorized sources, etc., things like this. So how does this justify then? Because now obviously that image that you've put there isn't really going anywhere, but if I generated that with the PC Pro logo on, Mr. Danton would have something rightly to say about it, and so would our publishers. So how do we get away with that now, where it will start generating what essentially is copyrighted logos and that sort of stuff? Because that's now moving into territory where it's been a bit vague before, but now it's getting better at it. We can start to misrepresent more convincingly.
Yeah, so what I think we saw yesterday morning was it released almost with all the guardrails off. And so what I've just posted, in fact, into the Discord chat is a picture it was basically a reference picture, the picture taken in the White House last month of Donald Trump arguing with Zelensky in the White House, and someone turned that into a South Park cartoon, and it looks entirely convincing as a South Park cartoon. I've tried again many times this morning to generate things like that, and it's refusing or it's balking, and I suspect we're now starting to see overnight the legal warnings have started dropping from various copyright holders, and now I suspect OpenAI are pulling back on some of these capabilities, as they have done in the past, once people start flagging that this is doing stuff they maybe didn't intend. So it'd be interesting to see how this settles down over the next few days in terms of, if I entered that same PC Pro prompt next week, would it still generate that image? I'm not sure. I wonder if a few things have crept through and then they are going to have to wind back a bit.
And that's my worry, Barry, because if you're going to use this with your own particular prompt to get a logo, and you think that over the next months you can generate new logos based around the same cute little dog, and in a month's time it's all gone a bit pear-shaped because you can't actually get the same output again, that is quite a worry.
Yeah, as with all of these things, I think, use with caution, approach with caution. But I mean, the other thing with the dog is that, and someone does pointed out, in fact, you're right, it's not quite identical. But you can always just take the reference image you've already got and use it again. So it's not like you've lost the image of the dog full stop, for example, as long as it's not copyrighted, of course. Anyway, quite enough of AI gubbins for 1 week, I suspect. Let's move onwards, and of course I've lost my script where I'm trying to bash all that into.
It's with me.
Go on, Darren.
This is a new story about. There's actually been two stories, and in order to talk about the one which we had lined up, I first of all would like to very quickly fill you in on a lawsuit which came to a conclusion earlier this week, in which, I love this, it was legally established that Meta, the company obviously behind Facebook and Instagram, is no longer allowed legally in the UK to target adverts at Tanya O'Carroll, a 37-year-old woman living in London. This is because Ms. O'Carroll she's a human rights expert, and she got fed up with being targeted with ads on Facebook, and she happens to know a thing or two about the law. So she told Facebook, stop targeting me with these ads. I have the right to not be targeted. Facebook demurred. She took it to court. She won. Facebook has admitted, okay, you're right, we will now only serve you up generic adverts. In the fallout of this, it has been suggested by Meta that they might start offering in the UK the same service, admittedly, which already exists in the EU, which is you can pay a small monthly subscription to get an ad-free experience. It started out being €10 a month when it was launched, I think year before, but that's now fallen to €6 a month, and maybe if this thing comes to the UK, we can pay something equivalent, like a £5 a month, if we wish, to get completely rid of ads on Facebook and Instagram. Although it has been observed that since this option was offered in the EU, people have mostly chosen not to put their money where their data is, and instead just live with the advertising. It's an interesting, well, I say it's interesting, you might have opinions about it. It also raises the question of, should we be put in a position where we have to decide whether to give up either our personal information or our money? Or I suppose, it's not yet mandatory to have a Facebook account, so there's that possibility too.
Yeah, I mean, I was quite interested in this in the sense that I'm actually quite open to the idea of paying for it if it stops targeting me. I mean, you have to accept that you're using their service; it comes at a cost. If it's free at the point of entry, then they're going to try and recoup that money somehow, and targeted advertising is how they've chosen to do it. But if they give me the option to pay to get out of that, I'm not strongly opposed to that. Lee?
Darian took a sharp intake of breath at that point. He was about to back at you, so I'm going to defer to Darian.
Sorry, yeah. Well, I mean, because one thing that Meta's discussed this with the Information Commissioner's Office before. They talked about, well, the ICO has a fairly robust ongoing dialogue with Meta about the use of personal information. And one of the things which has come up is, although Facebook may not be showing you ads, if you subscribe to the ad-free experience, there are questions, and as yet the UK service is merely hypothetical, so we don't know. There are questions about to what extent Facebook is nevertheless harvesting information about you, which it might use for purposes other than advertising things directly to you.
Okay. Yeah, that's exactly my position. I'm not prepared to give them a penny until I know that not only am I not, so there's too many knots in this, not only am I not going to be advertised at, but I'm also not going to be data mined. And I'm afraid to say, as far as I'm concerned, those two things have to go together.
Lee?
You either have money or you have a revenue. You have the revenue stream. You don't do both. Sorry, Lee.
No, it's all right. Don't panic. Frankly, I've got nothing worth listening to. The thing about Tanya O'Carroll's case I thought was particularly interesting was the ICO say, basically their ruling is that targeted advertising does qualify as direct marketing. Meta said that their defense was that its ad targeting system did not constitute direct marketing because its ads were targeted to groups of a minimum size of 100 people rather than individuals, which, as we all know, that's what direct marketing is. When Domino's opens a pizzeria in your area and suddenly there's leaflets and promo codes shoved through your door, there's a reason for it, and it's called direct marketing. So my question is, apart from the fact that Meta clearly needs to get a grip or some better defense lawyers, is why hasn't the ICO said any of this before? Why isn't it acted? If it has this belief, and this isn't a new argument that Miss O'Carroll was throwing at. I mean, she's done far better than anyone else has, but fundamentally her argument has been voiced before plenty of times. And just to iterate on John's point, reading a few sort of different variants of this, because we don't actually know sort of word for word what the O'Carroll settlement was. It was all sort of terminated before it got to court, so we don't know the nuts and bolts of it. And there's a lot of focusing on what is going to be given to you as an advert, but not a lot of information on what's going to be taken from you as far as hoovering data. And agreeing with John, I think that's the important thing for me. Can we be certain, really certain, given the age of digital exceptionalism that we're living through, that Meta will start displaying generic ads without continuing to hoover the data? Should we trust Meta to do this?
You are quite right. Sorry, can I just clarify? I think I may have implied that Tanya O'Carroll won the lawsuit, but as you say, Meta actually backed down a couple of days before it was due to be heard. They settled out of court rather than have the precedent set.
There's a few interesting comments on Discord from the Hyperlawyer. A lot of people saying they came off of Facebook years ago and Twitter years ago and have not gone back. But I think Succenter makes a good point about, he says, I don't have a Facebook account, but it's getting increasingly difficult not to. The number of small organisations using it instead of a website is distressing. And that is definitely a trend amongst small businesses that, don't want to go to the hassle and expense of creating their own website, but do use Facebook quite a lot. I definitely recognise that.
Yeah, but it's absolutely the wrong way of doing it, because being the local friendly computer repair shop, when things go invariably wrong with computing, and that includes Facebook, of which I have no real control, any control at all, I am the person that people turn to. And the amount of small businesses that I've had stood at the counter going, they've locked my account, I can't get in, I can't talk to anyone, and suddenly their business is gone. I've known people that have lost their business because their entire database has gone. They didn't have an offsite, they didn't do backups, they trusted the platform, and it really is the wrong way of doing it. Again, it's a useful tool. What is interesting about what is happening now with these potential changes is, if you are someone that advertises on Facebook, if you take the subscription model, you can no longer basically advertise.
Yeah.
So if you're a normal user who uses adverts to monetize the platform, the subscribing turns all that off. You can still boost a post and use a couple of ad options like ads in Reels, but the monetization basically mainly goes unless you're something what is called a eligible creator, and there's obviously smoke and mirrors and of how you become one of those.
John?
Just a quick search for. We were talking about Facebook. The question was asked about how much money Facebook makes per user per month or per year. Facebook had 164 billion revenue in 2024. 72 billion is from the US and Canada, despite that only being 8.9% of their user base. So half of their money, half of their revenue is coming from 9% of their user base. And they've got 3 billion active monthly users and 2 billion login daily. So 164 billion revenue divided by, let's say, 2 billion. You're in the region of $70 to $80 per user per year in terms of their billable income. And they made a net profit of 62 billion on their 164 billion turnover.
Very similar to the PC Pro figures. So
only on a bad month.
There was another little meta thing, wasn't there, Darren, before we move along?
Oh, was there? I'm sorry, I didn't see that. What was it?
This was the issue that John raised earlier about Meta has been found to be purloining authors' books in the US. It looks like it trained the Meta AI on a massive stash of, I think pirated is the only word I can use here safely.
Questionable provenance, I think is the technical term here.
Thank you, John. And so they are now facing a lawsuit in the US. I think it's from the US Authors Society, a class action lawsuit on behalf of all US authors to recover some of that income. We did notice, or Lee noticed, I should say, that 4 PC Pro contributors have had their books purloined by Facebook, so maybe we start a PC Pro class action lawsuit, and if you want to crowdfund that, you can hit me on Facebook, and I'll put my credit card details on there. In the meantime, let's shuffle along, and the next one's with you, Lee.
Yeah, if you're listening to this podcast on a Google Pixel 4a phone, there is a good chance that your battery will have died before we get to hot hardware. Sorry about that. The reason is that back in January, Google began to roll out an update which has basically trashed the battery life. The accompanying Google Tech Note basically says, for some devices, brackets impacted devices, the software update reduces available battery capacity and impacts charging performance. Now, very famously, Apple was spanked a few years ago for tweaking battery performance on older phones, and the Pixel 4a is a Q3, Q4 2020 handset. It's no longer software supported by Google. So is this the same thing? Well, no. Apple tweaked first and apologized later, whereas Google told users they were going to trash their phones. Admittedly, it could have made a bit more noise about it. There seems to be not a lot of people that got the memo and have gone searching for why is my 4A so poor and have come up with the answer. The better news for these 4A owners is that Google are offering what it calls appeasements. And you've got 3 to choose from if this is affecting you. You can have a $50 goodwill payment. I believe there are localized currency versions of these available. But I'll go $50 goodwill payment, a $100 discount on a new Pixel phone, or a free battery replacement. So I think looking at those 3, we can dismiss this update as a bit of a backdoor ruse for selling new phones, because if it was, they really wouldn't be offering a free battery replacement on an out-of-support phone. So what is really going on? And this is the bit of the story they're not telling you. The story, from what we can work out, is that the battery in some of the Pixel 4As has degraded to the point where there's a risk of it overheating. Now, although the batteries inside all 4As look the same, and even rumours have it they've got the same manufacturer badge on them as well, they actually come from 2 different sub-manufacturers. I won't name either of them because it's yet to be confirmed by Google, but it's pretty well known who they are. But it appears that the cells made by one of the manufacturers has failed to the point where the regular charging of a 4A risks overheating a lithium-ion battery, and obviously that produces the indoor fireworks display that no one wants to see. Google's firmware update detects which battery is inside the 4A, and if the Duff one is found, it modifies the profile to limit the capacity and the charging speed to reduce heat. Really to a point where the battery lasts only about 2-3 hours and takes a very long time to charge. You could argue that it's forcing the hand of the Pixel 4A owner to do something. Now, as I said, Google's tech note doesn't mention any of this, but the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, the ACCC, does. Basically, they're the Australian version of our Competition and Markets Authority, or the FTC in the USA. They've issued a product recall on the 4A, and they advertise in the appeasements. They advertise the appeasements I mentioned earlier, but they also port to another option for Australians, which I think is really interesting. Consumers may exercise their rights to a remedy in accordance with the consumer guarantees, which may entitle them to a refund or replacement. And that's a very different picture for Google to handle on an out-of-support phone. Now, I can't comment on, obviously, how successful Australian 4A owners will be on getting a refund for this, but that's really for Google's owners to work out.
What do you make of this one, Darren?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, when you originally said the 3 appeasements, by the way, the word appeasement is hilarious. It sounds like something out of Severance. You sort of suggested that you thought maybe they were being used to nudge people towards buying a new Pixel phone. But I sort of thought to myself at that point, I thought, well, what else do you want Google to realistically do? Because all the possible remedies are laid out there, regardless of whether you want to keep your phone or whether you've had it for, at this point, 5 years, so it's time to... You've probably been thinking about upgrading anyway, I would imagine. And while with my, I like to very much champion the consumer from my position of utter impotence on that front. But the idea of being able to get a refund on a phone that you've had the use of for 5 years is very attractive. But I don't think it's reasonable, to be honest. I think that the phone works for its expected lifespan. I mean, I think we had a discussion about this on the PC Pro Slack yesterday. And I think it really boils down to, what are you really buying? What is your expectation of what you should get for your money when you buy a phone? I think we can agree you're not expecting it to work perfectly forever. You wouldn't realistically expect your Pixel 4a to still be working. If you buy it in 2020, you do not expect it to still be working in 2030. So where is the, is it a taper? Is it a cutoff? It used to be very simple that Orange would phone me up every 11 months and say, you're entitled to an upgrade, we'll get you a new phone, just stay here. And everybody knew the yearly upgrade cycle was a thing. But with Google's, Google and Samsung have very much encouraged the idea that a phone should last longer. This was one of the things we were talking about on Slack yesterday, is that the idea that now you expect a phone to last 7 years. It's advertised as that. So although that wasn't in place when the 4A came out, the 4A has has exited support, as Lee says. I think it's not unreasonable for someone who is using that phone and it was still working for them to say, well, hang on, I bought this and it's only died because you used dodgy parts. So yeah, as I say, it comes back to, there is not in law, there is not in the contract when you bought the phone, a cut-off point where it says after this you have no right to expect it to continue working. So it will be really interesting to see what happens in Australia as and when somebody says, well, I bought this phone, it was working then, I'm entitled to a refund if you killed it.
Yeah, John, I will come to you a second. Just on the follow-up on that, I think what you say is true, but I think you've also got a reasonable expectation that the manufacturer doesn't kibosh the phone artificially, perhaps, is
well, yeah, that's another aspect to it, because is it artificial if it's necessary as part of the fabric of the phone? They have a responsibility to ensure that your phone is not going to burst into flames.
Right.
Put it another way, Darren. If you bought a Tesla and this happened to your Tesla, you would expect them to sort this out.
Well, it depends. If I'd only had the Tesla for 5 years, I probably would. But, I mean, the lifespan of a car is very different to the lifespan of a phone. But if I'd had the car for 20 years, I maybe wouldn't expect that.
All right, John, before I start waning with verbal haymakers on Darren, let's see what you think.
My only thought here, just to add in, is that manufacturers are absolutely terrified of the social media pile-in that can happen these days and the bad news that can sort of go viral within 6 hours globally. And out of all proportion often to the original problem. And so often the most preemptive thing that they can do is basically to say, we will sort it, we'll give you a new one, we'll replace your granny or whatever, because and lunch at the Savoy as well, because after all, all that pain and suffering that you've had. And often it can just seem to be the easiest thing to go slightly overkill with your reaction, to try and dampen down any potential flames, because these things can go viral very, very quickly these days.
Okay, we've got to shuffle along because we are running out of time and we have yet to do nibs and hot hardware. So let's crack on with those nibs. And the first one's for you, John.
Yeah, Apple Intelligence, and some people are saying, well, what intelligence? It's not very intelligent to me. Apple have been rolling out a whole bunch of sort of AI or Apple Intelligence capabilities, and they've been doing so in sort of dribs and drabs. And one of those dribbinesses, if I can use such a term, is that I don't think it's even quite yet shipped in European languages, for example. If it's not, it's about to. And it's taking its time. And then people are saying, well, it's not very good, and you haven't even delivered what you promised to deliver. There is a court case on the basis of false advertising that has been launched in the U.S. District Court in San Jose, a class action suit. We do know how our American friends are quite happy to pile in with the class action suit, and they're claiming that it's not. They have yet to deliver on what they had said that they were going to, even though I'm fairly sure I remember them saying it was a work in progress and it was coming out over time. And we must remember, of course, that what Apple is trying to do is a very different thing to a traditional LLM or ChatGPT, if I can use such a term as traditional AI, because they're trying to do everything on device or on encrypted server and using your data rather than throwing the data up to the public cloud and sort of allowing these big companies to chomp their way through it. Other piece of news related to this, John Giandria has been taken out as head of Siri. He's been moved sideways. It's yet to see whether he's actually still going to be there or whether he is going to be spending more time with his lettuce plants. Mike Rockwell is who was head of the Apple Vision project, which is still going absolute storming guns in terms of its development on the software OS and the tools. He has taken over to basically try and pull something together here. Clearly, I would certainly agree that Apple were over enthusiastic, possibly spooked in their marketing department by what the rapid change of things that was happening on ChatGPT, OpenAI, and so on and so forth. And they felt they needed to say something. And I think actually, with hindsight, they should have just sat there and said, "We'll do something when we can do it in a way that doesn't screw you, the customer, and please just wait while this, while this all is done properly by grown-ups, quote unquote, if I can use such a thing." So that's what's happening. A quick nib about Apple lack of intelligence.
Okay, and there's another court case, this time affecting HP, Lee.
Yeah, a 2020 class action lawsuit brought against HP has been settled this week. The claim by 2 US companies accused HP of using firmware to prevent users from using third-party inks. Yes, my dear listener, it's 2025 and this is still a thing. HP continues to claim that its firmware updates are dynamic security and that printers made after the December the 1st, 2016 will be blocked from using third-party pots. The legal settlement, because it didn't quite get to court, was approved on Tuesday, with the plaintiffs getting $5,000 each. HP also poded up $725,000 in legal fees, so you can probably imagine why they were quite keen to settle out of court. This will actually be of zero interest to HP users who currently can't use their printers, as a recent firmware upgrade has rendered them unable to detect any cartridge, including genuine HP ones. HP is still working on a solution for that one.
Brilliant. Darian, last one for you.
Yeah, this is about Wi-Fi 7, woohoo! But it's sort of not necessarily good news. So you cannot have missed a big multi-million pounds advertising campaign from EE, which is the first of the ISPs to roll out Wi-Fi 7 routers as standard. And there's posters all over the place. There's one outside my house saying everything works better on Wi-Fi 7, EE. Other ones you might have seen, Google works better on Wi-Fi 7. Wi-Fi 7 on EE makes every device work better, and there's one doing the rounds aimed at gamers, which says Xbox plays better on Wi-Fi 7. Now, as you may, yes, I can see people shaking their heads already, because the first of these claims was optimistic. The later ones that get increasingly fanciful. Wi-Fi 7, as we all know, has absolutely no benefit unless you connect to it from a Wi-Fi 7 enabled device. There are very few of those out there. It is very much a stretch to say it makes every device work better, and it's certainly not true to say Xbox plays better on Wi-Fi 7, because the Xbox does not have Wi-Fi 7. The ASA has caught up with this and has told EE it must not make these claims anymore, but it's been making them since, October, so the message is probably, the cat's out of the bag by now, never mind.
James London says your dishwasher works better on Wi-Fi 7, which is a slogan I'm sure EE's marketing team are rabbiting down as we speak. Go on, Lee.
There's an irony that, given the problems Darian's had getting broadband into his house, that suddenly outside it, 6 foot away, is an advert for Wi-Fi 7. That's direct marketing going wrong. That really is.
Okay. It's hot hardware time, and this is an absolute first for the PC Pro hot hardware slot. How many shows are we on now, boys? Is it 7? Go on.
I've just shut me. What's it? 7:30 something. 7:35.
735 of these podcasts over a process of about 15 years, and this is the first time we are reviewing a piece of wood. This is in fact the piece of wood that is holding up my computer that you can see me on, because this is my desk. This desk I bought just before Christmas. Oh, I've crashed. No, I haven't. Which is called the ER Gear, or Gear, standing desk. Now, I'll admit, I'm not a standing desk person. I have no interest in standing while I rabbit away to you. So why did I buy a standing desk, you may ask? The main reason is because it is obviously height adjustable. So when you're doing things like podcasts and you don't need to be rattling at a keyboard whilst you're doing it, as I am every week on the PC Pro podcasts, you can raise the desk rather than having to try and raise, because I use a MacBook as my primary device. So instead of having to use an external camera or whatever, I can just raise the desk up and down. Someone's raising a desk in the background. Who is this? Stop them now. John, stop it. You can raise up and down to adjust the camera angle. He's doing it as well. Stopping it getting everywhere. It's clearly the word has got out that standing desks are in, and the entire PC Pro crew has now gone and got one.
For years, dear heart, for years.
But how much did you pay for yours, John?
Well, we've actually quite a few. They're about £400-500 at the time, but they are big. They're like 80 centimeters deep, and they are full stretch wide, each of them.
Well, I have got 160 of your Earth centimeters by 70, and this one weighed in at 159 pounds.
Well, it's
So
about time the prices came down. I can tell you that for certain sure.
yeah, so basically, I mean, this is a pretty simple desk in terms of the mechanics of it. It's got 4 different height controls.
I mean, 4 different height controls.
So you can set 4 different memory positions, basically. You know, obviously, you can adjust to whichever height you like between, I think it's just under 70 centimeters and 110 centimeters in terms of height.
Oh, that's not a big adjustment. Mine goes much further than that.
Well, okay, but yours is much more expensive.
I know.
And there are 4 different memory settings, so you can obviously set the memory setting to whichever one you want, and then when I press the 2 button, up it goes with a nice smooth motor. And apparently this one can lift up to 80 kilograms. Wait, if you can go 80 kilometers, I'll be going to the moon. But probably not quite. But yes, so you have to be a bit careful. Obviously, if you've got, like I have, lots of power cables and stuff in here, I almost knocked my telly over earlier because it was covering over the edge of the desk. So you have to obviously be a bit careful if you're lowering and raising your desk all the time, because cables can get pulled out of routers and that kind of stuff. But it's all very smooth. That all just happened rather quietly. I don't know if you heard it. And it just works. And it's £159, and we don't do desks very often in PC Pro. So I thought I would suggest it, not least because we had nothing else for hot hardware this week. Any questions?
Yes, is it Wi-Fi 7?
It's not Wi-Fi 7, John.
Is there an app?
There's not an app, no.
Can I integrate it with Home Assistant?
You can't, John, no.
Can I say, hey Siri, elevate my knees?
No, it's not voice activated desk. That's a version 2 that's coming in September, I believe.
Oh.
You are joking, aren't you?
Yes, I am joking.
Thank you.
Anybody else got any questions before I bring this shambles to a close?
Does it have anything exciting in it, Barry, apart from a motor and a couple of sort of positioning? Does it have like a built-in wireless charger? Does it have a USB hub? Does it have a vibro massager? Does it, what colour is it, Barry?
It's black.
Black.
It's black. I will share the.
Well, that's so very 1997, isn't it? Really.
I will share the link on.
Does it have an optional battery pack to act as a UPS on the table?
That's true. What if you get stranded in a power cut, Barry, at the wrong desk height? This could be critical.
This is major problem here.
You're right. There's no manual override. What I will say was it was brilliantly packaged when it came. So the desk surface itself is in 2 parts, which you fit together. But the whole instructions, me and my daughter, and I am the least practical man you ever met. I shouldn't even be let near a screwdriver, and we did it in just over 20 minutes. So it was all very neatly packaged, good instructions, very simple to put together. It does have a hook on either end where you can hang your headphones or your handbag if you're that way inclined. So, yes.
Is it adjustable depth? I'm looking here. It claims to be. I'm confused here. Oh, it's got a pull-out keyboardy thing, hasn't it?
Yes, a keyboard drawer in front of me, which is very important because it means you're not sat on your screen. You can sit back from your screen.
But they're saying 28-inch depth, it's 8-inch deeper than the industry standard or something. Yes, okay.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that, but it's pretty shallow, and it's got a wrist rest that you sort of adhesive. There's got an adhesive strip. I can't even say the bloody thing that you put along to stop your wrist getting bashed on the edge of the desk and stuff. So £159, eh? Bargain.
Is there a warranty on it?
I don't know, Lee.
Yeah, is it repairable?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Can you play Doom on it? Is there an anti-splinter guarantee?
Can you buy replacement legs?
Right, I'm stopping this conversation now. So I don't think you're taking this in the spirit it was intended.
At this point.
Yes, I'm starting a vote. Right, if you're listening on Discord, and Christ allows how this is going to go, you can now vote.
No one's still listening.
Yeah. John, start with you.
Well, but it's 133 quid, mate. So that is a bargain. That really is cheap compared to at least what the last lot I built, last lot I bought here.
159. That's not oversell it.
Sorry, 133 excluding.
Oh, excluding that. Okay.
Because of course, you'll be wanting this if you're a business customer.
Good point.
So, I mean, I think from that point of view, it has to be hot. What I would say is that the ones that we've got here are exceptionally sturdy, and they're like 10 years in, and they still work, and they don't wobble and so forth. So I would want to be a little bit more reassured about the longevity of this, in terms, especially looking at its construction, how good it is on side-to-side wobble. Because there's only a cross brace at the top, it seems, whereas this one does actually have a cross brace across the middle of the legs. So I'd like to know a little bit better, because this does not move at all, other than up and down electrically. But you can't argue with your 159 quid, and I think it would be nice if there was more choice of wood colours rather than just black. But I'm being fussy here, so I'm going to give it a hot for the money.
Nice one. Lee.
I have a congenital hatred of stand-up desks. I used to work for a large supermarket in the UK. It was the green one, who took out all their chairs and replaced all their meeting rooms with stand-up desks, to basically shorten the meeting. And what only happened was that people were still in the same length meetings, but now couldn't sit down, was slumped against desk, excluding the poor person who was in the wheelchair, who did get a seat but couldn't see over the top of the desk, so couldn't see anything at all. So standing desks just never do it for me, and a few customers have had them over the years and have essentially either sawn the legs off at the end or ditched it, gone to back. So I see them as a short-term thing. I like the idea of getting up out your seat and stretching in different heights, but so it's a personal thing. So I'm not saying it's not a bad product, but it absolutely doesn't do it for me. So it's a not, I'm afraid.
Okay, Darian.
I'm really going back and forth on the. I mean, I've been
Up
going
and
back
down, Darian, not back and forth.
I've been vacillating over standing desks for many years, and
Cream for that.
I mean,
Let him finish.
I like the concept, but I mean, £159 is it's really irritating me, because it's not a premium price where you can say I'm making a big investment in this, very premium engineered thing for my ergonomic living and working situation. It's not, it's tantalizingly affordable, but it's an awful lot more than just, a fold out table from B&M. And I'm not sure the value I would get from it. I suppose I have never been sure about standing desks, as is coming across very clearly, I imagine, and I'm not sure about this one. And I kind of didn't really detect anything when you were describing it. You didn't sound excited. It sounded more like, I mean, I guess it's got a gadgety kind of appeal, like a sort of Swiss Army knife of desks. But I don't know. You haven't sold it to me. I'm sorry.
It would be better if it was, IP addressable and,
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, although we were kind of
2025, it kind of needs to do a bit more than just go up and down on the switch.
Yeah, although we were kind of playing around. If it had an integrated USB hub or something, I could see it, but it's not quite. It doesn't have that thing that pushes me over the edge. So I'm afraid not only am I not going to buy it, I'm not going to vote hot. Sorry.
Oh dear. Ian Ruston says the pins are like the desk, up and down. Yes, they are, but mainly down, it seems, certainly amongst the good readership of PC Pro, where it's currently suffering it's just changed to basically a 60-40 defeat. But that's tighter than I thought it was going to be honest, so I'll take 40% with me. I think the unreal expectations of what a desk will offer in 2025, I will have to take up with the team and privately, but for all those who've managed to join us and spend the last 10 minutes talking about a desk, thank you very much for doing so. We'll be back next week. Have a good time and we'll see you then. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
That's a new poll widget on Discord, I believe.
That's one we've been using for months.
I haven't been using it.
No, it doesn't allow them to add in, all sorts of other
Emojis.
rubbish.
Right, yeah. So now no longer don't use the command poll. If you just press the plus button in the chat window, you can do create poll there, and that keeps the hoi polloi in check. But they've sussed it. See, now look, you've started. They've worked out how to emoji it, but they can't.
Have they?
Yeah.
They've worked out how to emoji it, but I see there. I see. So it doesn't. Okay. Well,
it doesn't affect the votes. They can
well-
still vote an emoji, see? And so you get a truer reflection of the poll, and it's easier to do.
Okay, well, we got to 6:05, and I learned something from today's 6:05.
6:05?
6 minutes past 2.
It only feels like 6:05.
Yes, all right. Well, I've got the edits still to come, so I am going to take this opportunity to wave you all goodbye. Thank you, and I'm not here at the next 2 podcasts, so...
Oh, it's me, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I might be doing next week, but it'll be from Heathrow, and I can't do the other one because I'll be about an hour and a half out of Heathrow coming back. So, sorry about that.
Darian sounded like he was broadcasting from Heathrow partway through. There was a big plane going over.
Oh, yeah, our house is
That was
just...
Darian.
it's
that was him.
Oh, I see. I was to say I'm not on that. I'm on a different side of you. Yes, our lovely new home is right at the right next to Cambridge City Airport. So
I managed to edit one of them out of last week's podcast, but I couldn't edit the second one.
Sorry, I try to just silence myself whenever anything is going.
It happened when you were talking, so
no.
even my best spectral editing wasn't
I
helping.
was going to say, yeah, if you get spectral layers up or something, you can probably do, because this podcast definitely deserves that level of fine attention. Sorry, I'm just a bit D-Mob happy because I don't remember the last time I had 2 weeks off from the podcast. It's very, very rare. I'm sure you've got the stats actually.
We'll cancel or leave.
Not on me on this machine, but I can let you know within the hour.
I would be interested to know. Thank you.
Well,
All
there
right.
you go. Right, done.
I really need to go. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Bye,
Take
folks.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.